The 999 call was made at 7:44 that evening. All that Mandy Joseph could scream down the phone at that point was, "Help, help."
There were sounds of a gunshot and a woman screaming for help, and then the line went dead.
There's been a murder. I said, well, what do you mean there's been a murder? He said, yeah, they've found 2 women murdered up by the garage. It's got to be them.
It's something that is totally unbelievable, to kill them both. It was just devastating, and you just could never, ever imagine something like that happening in Oakcliffe.
It was vicious in the extreme.
When officers reviewed the CCTV, they identified a vehicle that came down the pathway around the time of the murder, and these are the people responsible for the deaths.
Oakcliffe, a quintessentially English village situated in the heart of Bedfordshire, best known for being the birthplace of British explorer Arthur Henry Newman.
Oakcliffe is a smallish village in mid-Bedfordshire, straddles the A5. It's a quiet village. It's on a route between Dunstable in the south and Milton Keynes in the north.
Everyone knows everyone, really, so it's quite a nice little place to live and to stay and to be, really.
It's a lovely local community with a pub and a lovely little school. There's not a lot of trouble. It's a good little village.
I'd say the community is quite close-knit. A lot of people know a lot of other people, so everyone kind of knows everybody.
And central to the community and village life was Iris Jones and her husband.
Iris was a much-loved figure in the village, well known in the village. She'd lived here for years and years. She was known especially for the fact that she had fostered something like 120 children, she and her husband, over a sort of 30-year period, starting in the 50s and going through to the mid-1980s.
She was a woman who had fostered over 100 children. The local community held her in the highest regard.
She literally was an angel walking amongst us.
Auntie was, once you got to know her, she had a heart of gold. And she'd do anything for anybody.
She was much loved, a caring, compassionate person who opened up her home to countless children less fortunate.
I mean, it become a way of life to her, fostering several children there who we actually grew up with. And as I say, she was, that was her life, kids, really.
Iris's husband died in 1993, leaving Iris a widower. She remained close to her children, including her foster daughter, Mandy, whom she relied on.
Mandy Jones was fostered by Iris when she was about 4 years old. She's had a proper mother-daughter relationship throughout her whole life. Mandy was 34 years old. She was a carer herself. She worked in the care industry. Her whole life was about caring for others.
And when Iris's husband died, she moved back in with her foster mother to care for her in her declining health.
She was a caring girl. There was nothing she wouldn't do for you.
Iris walked with the aid of a frame and walking stick. She had heart problems, she had diabetes, and she had failing eyesight. In later years, as Iris's health declined, Mandy took a much more active role in the care of her foster mother, looking after her, caring for, making sure she had everything she needed.
Please, how can I help?
The 999 call was made at 7:44 that evening, and it was made by Mandy Joseph. All that Mandy Joseph could scream down the phone at that point was, "Help, help."
Then the line went dead. If a 999 call is cut off or goes dead for whatever reason, the operator will review what they've already heard. In this case, there was a woman screaming for help, so they would then dispatch units to the house.
Mandy's screams were not the only disturbing sound the police operator heard.
There were sounds of a gunshot, a woman screaming for help, and the control room inspector would then decide on the appropriate level of response because of the high level of risk to both the officers attending and the public. It's a proportionate response to dispatch a firearms team. In this case, it was always going to be a firearms team.
The call handlers did try to call back and there was no response, but the police were able to trace where the call had been made from, and that resulted in police being sent to the property, including armed police officers, who forcefully gained entry into the house that evening. The house where the shooting had taken place was up a gravel drive and situated behind a garage forecourt.
There's a petrol station, and by the side of it, there was a track that led down to this detached house.
Upon arrival, the armed officers were met with a gruesome sight.
They found Iris, she was lying by the sink. A further search of the house located Mandy in the lounge.
The women had been shot. Iris had been shot twice. Mandy had been shot 4 times. Shotgun cartridges were found at the house. So it was clear to the police officers that it was a shotgun killing of both women.
Immediately, police get to work preserving the scene.
Once the scene's been cordoned off, we'll be thinking about fast-track actions. What is it that we can do now to move the investigation on? The house was set back from the road, so was there any CCTV that could be reviewed straight away? What we want to do is try and identify the offenders as soon as possible.
We were sitting here watching telly, and all we could hear was sirens and a lot of commotion. And I went out and I could see the helicopter flying over Auntie's house. And I come in and I said, "There's something up," to the wife. And at the time, we had a phone, and I rang up my father and I said, "There's something going on up Auntie's house." And then my father rang me and said, "There's been a murder." And I said, "Well, what do you mean there's been a murder?" He said, "Yeah, they found 2 women murdered up by the garage." And then the bell began to sink in. And I can remember my father saying to me then, "It's got to be them." And that was a shock and a half when we knew it was both of them.
Quick assessments of the house revealed that there was no one else on the scene. However, it appeared that some items had gone missing.
A DVD was taken. The women's handbags were taken.
The motive looked like it was burglary.
Was this a burglary gone wrong?
It was just devastating, absolutely devastating. And you just could never, ever imagine something like that happening in Ockcliffe.
I think everyone talks to everybody, and it would be a very short period of time until everyone knew the situation.
I mean, this is a quiet area. People will tell you that. It was quiet then, it's quiet now. To get a double shooting, 2 people dead in the village. Truly exceptional.
And the question on everybody's lips was, who had committed such a heinous murder?
In a little village, or little villages, things spread quite quick. And people were all concerned because things like that don't happen. It's a nightmare.
This was a shocking crime for the village of Hockliffe. Somebody using that amount of force on two helpless women has only one intention, and that is to kill them.
In the quiet Bedfordshire village of Hockliffe, news has spread of the brutal murder of Iris Jones and her foster daughter, Mandy Joseph.
This is the house where Iris Jones and her late husband, Clifford, cared for 120 foster children. But this kindness was to prove her downfall.
The local community, and it was a quiet little area, were obviously shocked by the whole incident and very sad at the loss of two well-respected members of the community.
Everyone knew about it. It was the talk of the village. As I moved along the high street, talking to people, everyone was aware of what had happened.
Lots of people knew Iris Jones, knew Mandy, and they were just stunned that two pillars of the community, two kind, caring people, should have had their lives ended in such a way.
To me, as silly as it sounds, it's a bit like when Lady Di died, all went quiet, you know? And I think that's how it was. There was so many police around and all that lot, but it shocked everyone, really shocked the villages, not just Hockliffe.
With fear spreading through the community, police need to quickly establish the circumstances around the murders.
Once the scene's been cordoned off, the police will look for any fast-track actions, so anything that can lead them to the identity of suspects or the offenders. And that will include any passive data like CCTV, ANPR, any phone work that can be done. But it will also include speaking to witnesses, the suspects, but also what we call victimology. If you find out how a person lived, you may find out how they died.
Post-mortem results reveal that Iris was shot twice and Mandy 4 times, using a shotgun.
This is a very brutal murder. The way both Iris and Mandy have been gunned down with a shotgun, it's absolutely, yeah, it is. It's top-scale brutal.
It was vicious in the extreme. Mandy had been shot in the chest and also in the hand, which shattered the mobile phone she was holding to make the 999 call. So that's why it abruptly ended.
Upon realising what was happening, she ran to the phone, dialed 999 and was screaming for help, but the phone was shot out of her hand, and this was confirmed by the pathologist during their post-mortem.
With the emergency call cutting out when Mandy was shot, police confirm the time of death as 7:45 p.m. so can start to piece together Iris and Mandy's last known movements.
The police have been out talking to residents in the area, doing house-to-house inquiries. And of course, they'd also made inquiries with the garage forecourt, where there was a shop, and they spoke to the staff there. Mandy had finished her shift at the care home in Luton where she worked and had arrived home. But first, she called at the garage forecourt and went into the shop to buy some items, firelighters, because I think the plan was to have a log fire that evening. So she brought firelighters, she brought some cigarettes, said hello to the staff before going back up to the house.
And inquiries at the garage give police their first breakthrough.
That garage forecourt was subject to CCTV, which was handed over to the police.
The thing with this investigation is we can time the 999 call. So one of the fast-tracked actions would be to review any CCTV in the area around that time. And an obvious one was the garage forecourt, because you had to drive past that or through it to get to Iris's house. When officers reviewed the CCTV, they identified a vehicle that came down the pathway and back out onto the A6 around the time of the murder.
And one sees this people carrier moving in the distance, moving past the garage along the track.
And it was at a time which was about 10 minutes after a 999 call had been made from the house.
And that's what led the police to go to find and identify who was driving the vehicle and so on.
Once we have the registration number of the vehicle, it was flagged on the police national computer to be stopped and checked and reported back to Bedfordshire. Because they may be witnesses to the offence, they also may be the offenders. So it's imperative that we find them as soon as possible, because we can put them in the area of the murder at the time it happened.
A day after the murder, and police track down the car in Suffolk. Inside is a couple. But that's not all.
When they searched the vehicle, they found a shotgun in the back. Once the police find a shotgun in the rear of the vehicle, then they were arrested on suspicion of murder straight away, because we've got 2 victims with shotgun wounds. So you've got your suspicion straight away.
The police told us on that Monday they had arrested the couple along with a 14-year-old boy.
Police named the couple arrested as 36-year-old Anita Mansfield and her husband, 46-year-old Michael Milcroft, as well as an unnamed teenager.
Where a shotgun has been used or a firearm has been used, it's vital that we identify everybody who may have been responsible or may have come into contact with the weapon. So in this case, the police forensically examined the 14-year-old boy, and that examination revealed he had gunshot residue on him.
He's showered with gunshot debris. So he was at the scene of the crime. So that's where the police start accusing him being part of the murder.
Once suspects are arrested in a case, that's just the start of the work for the police. There's a huge amount of forensic work that has to be done. We have to carry out searches at their home address or home addresses. And we have to speak to witnesses or people that knew them and dig into their background as well to see if there's any motive that we can identify.
Police start by looking into the backgrounds of Anita Mansfield and Michael Milcroft to see how they could be linked to Mandy and Iris.
Anita Mansfield was someone Michael Milcroft met in the 1980s. He met her in a pub in Dunstable. They quickly formed a relationship.
He then married Anita Mansfield and they had a family together.
We do know that he may have worked as a pot man, helper in a local pub in Leighton Buzzard at one stage, but to all intents and purposes, he was unemployed. He was a carer for Anita. She didn't work. She had health issues to the extent that she told people she couldn't work. A lot of people, a lot of her neighbours thought this was a bit of a sham and that she was using her poor health as a meal ticket, was the way it was described.
She was claiming benefits, but always had delusions of grandeur. She craved a more affluent lifestyle.
Information found at the couple's home at the time of the arrest reveals they were on the verge of moving.
Milcroft and Mansfield had set their hearts on buying a large country house in Suffolk. Really, they wanted to put their lives on a sound financial footing. They'd lived a nomadic life of living a very much a hand-to-mouth existence. They wanted to buy a big house for the family.
They'd found a house to move to, the dream home, which I think was one of the most expensive properties in the area. They wanted to go to that home with its swimming pool and so on.
And so the house near Beccles, that became the house of their dreams. And it was on the market, I think, for £740,000. The purchase should have gone through in the December of 2004, but again, Millcroft and Mansfield weren't ready. They hadn't got the funds. And so a new date was arrived at, which was February 28.
Millcroft and Mansfield were pulling the wool over the sellers' eyes in relation to the funding for buying their house.
With the couple living on state benefits and with no savings, police are perplexed as to how they can afford such an expensive new home. But it's not long before officers discover something of interest.
They were renting a property, and searches of that property found documents belonging to Mandy Joseph in the house itself.
The documents are revealed to be life insurance policies taken out by Mandy Joseph 18 months earlier.
She took out two with different companies. One was Norwich Union and one was Zurich Insurance.
Further investigations reveal that in the event of Mandy's death, her beneficiary named in the policies would receive a staggering £800,000. And this beneficiary was named as Anita Oakfield Bennett, also known as Anita Mansfield. Suddenly, police believe they have a motive for murder.
For the insurance companies to pay out, Mandy Joseph had to die.
Police investigating the murders of Mandy Joseph and Iris Jones have arrested a couple, Anita Mansfield and Michael Millcroft, alongside a 14-year-old boy. A search of the couple's home uncovers life insurance documents in the name of Mandy Joseph, which would pay out £800,000 to Anita Mansfield if she died.
Their plan was to get their hands on around £800,000. And unknown to Mandy, Anita Mansfield had taken out life insurance on her life, so that in the event of Mandy's death, the money from two life insurance policies would come to Mansfield and Millcroft.
You can't just go out and take an insurance policy on somebody. There has to be a lot of deception involved, and in this case, they deceived both Mandy and the insurance company.
The couple were extremely cunning all the way through. They built up a picture of Mandy's medical history. They had documents belonging to Mandy they shouldn't have had. They had a mobile phone of Mandy's that was taken from the house. Again, these were all things that could provide them with details of Mandy that would help them in the plan to set up these bogus insurance policies.
Police now believe Anita and Michael fraudulently set up the insurance policies to help fund a new lifestyle.
The plan was to buy this large mansion with the proceeds of that insurance policy.
There were policies apparently taken out on the life of Mandy, and they would have provided the husband and wife defendants with a beautiful home with a swimming pool and all sorts of other good qualities.
To get the money, Mandy Joseph had to die, and that meant they had to kill her.
But the question still remains. How are Anita and Michael connected to their victims, Mandy and Iris?
Michael Millcroft was the foster son of Iris Jones. He had gone to live with Iris and her family in 1959 when he was just 10 days old. And Iris gave a stable home full of love and warmth to lots and lots of children, and Michael Milcroft was one of them. So at the age of 10 days old, he was living with Iris and brought up by Iris and her late husband and became part of the family.
So for his whole life, Iris was his mother.
I remember Michael, yeah, he'd be a bit younger than me. He used to play with us as kids. He was part of our family.
It was said that Michael regarded Mandy as his younger sister. She looked on him as an older brother. They were brought up together as children. They sat round the dinner table, went on holidays together.
At one stage, Michael's girlfriend, Anita, even moved into the home with him. But in 1989, it seems there was a divide in the family.
Iris and Mandy, Michael and Anita had all gone on holiday to Mallorca. There was a big row while on holiday, with the result that when everyone returned, Michael and Anita Mansfield moved out. And that really marked a 12-year gap in things, because he stayed away from Iris and Mandy for all that time and didn't come back into their lives until around 2000. When Michael came back, he changed his name. He was always known as Michael Jones. He'd taken Iris's name. But he was now calling himself Michael Milcroft. And he was married to Anita. They'd started a family. And he was unemployed.
It's believed that this is the point in which the couple devised their devious plan.
For that to happen by a foster brother is just... you wouldn't put that, would you? It's something that is totally unbelievable, to think that money corrupts everything. To kill them both, nightmare. Nightmare.
You know, we kept thinking to ourselves, no, it can't be Michael what's done it.
With news sinking in that Iris's own foster son could be behind her murder, forensic evidence comes in.
We have the forensic evidence, DNA on the triggers of the shotgun, victim's blood on the shotgun, as well as Mansfield's DNA. These are the people responsible for the deaths.
Police present all their evidence against Anita Mansfield, Michael Milcroft and the teenager to the Crown Prosecution Service.
And they decided to charge them with murder.
There were murder counts and also counts of attempting to obtain money by deception.
With the three pleading not guilty to murder, preparation begins to build a case for trial. Starting with trying to prove that the couple had taken out the fraudulent insurance policy.
Anita did much of the setting up over the phone. She would ring an insurance company, pretended to be Mandy Joseph, and proceeded to give Mandy's medical history, saying what she smoked in a week, what alcohol intake, a general medical history, that sort of thing. These were all details that she had somehow gleaned over the last few years in the build-up to the killings, and it helped her in the pretense that she was Mandy Joseph on the phone.
With the policy set up, there was only one thing left to do.
Mandy's death was essential for the claim to be made on insurance. It was erasing certainty that Iris would be in the cottage, because at that time she was housebound. So they both had to be killed if they were going to succeed in getting the insurance money.
It's hard to believe that anybody thought they could get away with it. I mean, to us, you've got to be a little bit sick in the head to think that you can get away with something like that to start off with.
With the trial looming, defence barristers are appointed for the 3 defendants.
I've done many murder trials, either prosecuting or defending. The first I knew about this case was I was instructed in the autumn of 2005, and because the police and the CPS had chosen to charge the boy with being a murderer, he went into custody. So he's remanded in custody, and he goes to a small specialist unit where I visited him.
But there was one piece of information which hadn't yet been revealed about the 14-year-old boy.
He was their son. And I think potentially the most evil part of the case was that the parents thought they could blame their son and get away with it.
In Bedfordshire, Michael Millcroft, Anita Mansfield and their own son have pleaded not guilty to the murder of Iris Jones and her foster daughter, Mandy Joseph. The trial begins at Luton Crown Court.
The defendants in the case were a mother who complained of ill health, a father who was a rather pathetic sort of individual, and their 14-year-old son who left the premises covered in gunpowder.
What was revealed in court was the lengths that they went to plan this murder.
The court hears exactly what unfolded on that fateful day.
It was just an ordinary day. It was a Sunday afternoon. It was known that Millcroft and Mansfield were coming to the house that evening, and that's one of the reasons that she called into the shop, because the plan was to have a log fire burning for them when they arrived to make it homely and welcoming. And so Mandy had called into the shop to buy firelighters and to help get the fire going. Iris, he was waiting for him in the kitchen, having made a cup of tea and got a log fire roaring.
The first shot would have been delivered to the foster mother. She goes down on the ground in the kitchen. Mandy came into the kitchen, having heard the shot, and received the second barrel. She staggered out of the kitchen, and the son was able to describe to me that his father, having fumbled with the shotgun, reloaded it, went out into the hallway and shot Mandy a second time.
At one point, Mandy Joseph had been on her knees, having received a shotgun blast, but she was still on her knees when she was shot again.
Mandy still wasn't dead, so he fired bullets, shotgun into her again a couple of times, and then returned to the kitchen where his foster mother was still breathing. So she heard the killing, and he fired at her, finally killing her, and then left the premises.
In those last seconds of their lives, for Mandy and Iris, it must have been truly terrifying.
In the execution of their crime, the couple went to great lengths to make sure their plan didn't fail.
They even planned to alter the shot in the shotgun cartridge. Normally, a shotgun cartridge will fire small ball bearings and they will spread out into a certain pattern. In this case, they used harder and larger ball bearings, absolutely lethal and illegal to change the shot as well.
The jury also hears how the couple went even further to try to distance themselves from the crime by blaming their son.
Here were two defendants saying that it was the third defendant that did it. They were totally innocent. If there was any dishonesty shown by them when they were first seen by the police, it was because they wanted to protect the boy. That was their story. His story, of course, was that he simply wasn't involved. I think potentially the most evil part of the case was that the parents thought they could blame their son and get away with it. I relied upon the 14-year-old boy, he was then 15 when I represented him, relied on his recollection. He was the only witness to the killing, and his recollection was clear, and it seemed to fit in with other evidence.
The young boy was able to tell the police that he was aware that Millcroft and Mansfield had been planning the deaths of the women for some time, and that various ways of killing them had been discussed and thought about.
They sent the 14-year-old son to the library to research on poisoning.
He did what he was told. He went and looked in the library and read about one or two things and reported back on it.
Researching not just an insurance scam followed by a shooting, but other methods that how Mandy should be killed, including looking into poisoning her, looking into electrocuting her, looking into masonry, heavy masonry falling onto her, or that she would be the victim of a mugging gone wrong.
But it was clear from the evidence that was presented that they've manipulated him as he was growing up.
Anita's defense mirrored that of her husband. Both claimed they heard the firearm discharged, and the father left the vehicle and went in and found this dreadful scene. She claimed to have remained in the vehicle outside the cottage. Her husband went in and then left a few minutes later together with the boy.
The thing I remember most about this investigation was the sheer callousness and brutality of the murder, the callousness to take out life insurance policies because they wanted a house, and the brutality to murder two innocent women so that you can buy that house. It's evil.
After weeks of hearing evidence, the jury retires to consider their verdict.
The 14-year-old boy was found not guilty in this case.
He wasn't wicked, and he wasn't a killer. And that's what the jury must have been satisfied by at the end of their deliberations, that he had not been proved to be any part of the murder.
Then the jury delivers its verdict against Anita Mansfield and Michael Millcroft.
The evidence in this case was overwhelming. We have the forensic evidence. There's Millcroft's fingerprints on the trigger of the shotgun, as well as Mansfield's DNA. The 14-year-old boy had shotgun residue on his person. We've also got the CCTV from the time of the murder, and we've also got the shotgun found in the back of Millcroft's car. Adding to that, the documentation belonging to Mandy Joseph found at the rented property in Suffolk, as well as all the financial documents which identified fraudulent life insurance policies. So, yeah, pretty damning.
And it appears the jury agreed. Both were found guilty of murder.
Anita Mansfield received a sentence of 30 years, and Michael Millcroft received a sentence of 25 years. Mansfield got the longer sentence, because the judge found that she had been the prime mover in what happened, in putting together the plan. She had been the cold, calculated director of operations. Millcroft had very much been a passenger in what happened.
And the reality was that this was a vicious, mean, wicked killing. And I seem to remember an observation by the judge that they had shown no remorse at any time, and that was clearly the case.
The judge said this was, it was no sudden spur-of-the-moment killing.
They never once apologised for what had happened. They showed no remorse.
And the case has left its mark.
When you leave the court afterwards, you never forget the tragedy of the death of the two women.
I think the saddest thing about this crime is how little Millcroft and Mansfield valued the lives of their family.
Why they done it, well, I know why they done it. They done it for money, but why anyone would think they could get away with it, it's quite unbelievable, really.
I've been a policeman now for nearly 29 years, and I've dealt with some very nasty people, but I've never come across any people quite so evil.
Following the sentencing of Millcroft and Mansfield, Iris's natural son, Brian, revealed how his mum would have been looking forward to her foster son's visit on that fateful day.
First thing she'd do would be at the kitchen sink to make a cup of tea. And that's how she would have greeted them. Hello, love, do you want a cup of tea? And then they shot her.
I mean, Mandy would still be here now, and even today, there's not many days something triggers your mind and you think of Mandy and my Auntie Iris. That's all I can really say.
The death of Iris and Mandy, these were women that had given their lives to helping and caring for other people. Iris especially, she had taken Michael into her arms when he was just 10 days old. Truly, truly shocking and really, really upsetting.
Was a young woman who had a whole life ahead of her. Everybody was jittery, wondering what had happened to her.
Really a very dangerous person. This is the real whodunit.
Crimes don't really happen here. She'd been placed inside a suitcase. This was a brutal, horrific murder and an awful way to leave the body of a teenage girl.
I've been a criminal lawyer for over 30 years, and I've never dealt with a case like this before.
To have 3 trials is very rare, but the case was of such importance.
He would have walked free. And given what he had done before, we were in no doubt that he was a dangerous man.
Nestled in the southwest corner of Kent, the so-called Garden of England, this is the leafy, historic town of Royal Tunbridge Wells.
I would describe Tunbridge Wells as a safe family sort of location, wealthy and middle class.
There's a really low level of crime in the area. I feel very safe walking around at night.
People enjoy a very peaceful life on the whole and generally go about their business.
Tunbridge Wells is your archetypal Middle England. It's picturesque, it's surrounded by beautiful countryside. Crimes don't really happen here.
But that picture postcard image was about to be shattered. Kent police receive a call about a missing person, 17-year-old Terry Edmonds. The day before Easter Monday, Terry had arranged to meet her boyfriend, but she never showed up.
This was really out of character. She stayed in contact with her boyfriend regularly. She texted him on the hour almost, and he did the same back to her. They sent multiple texts to each other each day. So the fact that she did not text him was really unusual and set the alarm bells ringing.
Terry's boyfriend sent her 20 texts, but she never replied to any of them.
Her boyfriend got concerned, tried to phone her, didn't get any response, and then alerted her mum. And her mum then reported her missing to the police.
This disappearance was out of the ordinary for the happy-go-lucky teen.
She was bright and intelligent. She had 8 A-grade GCSEs. She was fiercely independent. She was a teenager who was turning into a young woman.
She decided to spread her wings, leaving home at just 16 to live in a housing association hostel in the centre of Tunbridge Wells.
She had aspirations to be a nurse. She was waiting to join college. She was too young to start training at that point to be a nurse. But from everything that we've heard, she was a caring, lovely, independent and headstrong, her mother said, but a young woman who had a whole life ahead of her.
She was very popular, lots of friends, was a girly girl. They described her as always liked to look nice, took care of herself.
But those friends were all equally puzzled at her disappearance, the only lead police have. She was 5 miles away in the town of Tonbridge when she last made contact.
She was in touch with her boyfriend, and she'd been to Tunbridge for the day, and she said, "I'm in Tunbridge Park, I'll be coming back soon." And then she didn't arrive back in Tunbridge Wells. So we started doing some searching in Tunbridge, because that's where she was last heard of.
So police cast their net wide, searching parks, old buildings, rivers, anywhere the missing teen could be. But the trail runs cold. With no other options, police appeal to the public and press for help. Her disappearance makes a big splash across the local media.
Tunbridge Wells is a place where crime doesn't normally happen. It's a tranquil place. So when a teenage girl goes missing, it becomes a news story. And Terry was just 17 years old. She had a mother, she had a boyfriend. So that's a story of local significance.
Terry going missing was really shocking for the people of Tunbridge Wells, and people were extremely worried. Everybody was jittery, wondering where she was and what had happened to her.
It's a closed community, people talk, so if there's something that does happen, then word does spread quite quickly.
It's 10 days since Terry went missing, and still no word from her. The family makes another desperate appeal to the public.
As time passed, we get more and more concerned when someone doesn't stay in contact. And what we were really more concerned about with this case was she'd not been in touch with her mum. Her mum would tell us that Terry always would respond to her. Even if it was a, "I don't want to talk to you," she would get a response. So when that didn't happen, obviously the concerns were raised.
Concerns are also rising across her close-knit hometown of Tunbridge Wells.
I think as the days went by and Terry was missing, fear started to grow that something terrible had happened to her. And there was a big community effort. There were posters everywhere. The taxi drivers all carried flyers. And there was even an information point by police for 2 reasons. One, to gather information, and other reason to try and reassure people, because there was a lot of worry at that time.
In the meantime, police have been trawling through hours of CCTV footage close to where she was last seen, in the nearby town of Tonbridge. Suddenly, there's a breakthrough. Terry is spotted at Tonbridge railway station on the day of her disappearance.
When we checked the CCTV, we actually found that she had actually got on the train to go to Tunbridge Wells. And then checking the CCTV at Tunbridge Wells railway station, we found that she had got off the train at Tunbridge Wells. So at that point, the searching moved from Tunbridge to Tunbridge Wells.
The investigation suddenly picks up pace in the hunt to find the missing teen. Police now draw up a search plan using this new CCTV sighting.
The last sighting of Terry Edmonds was at Tunbridge Wells rail station, where she got off the train at 6:23. So she walked across here, and Terry was never seen again.
Investigators plan a search grid around this last known location. The hunt leads to the supermarket car park opposite the station. On the 12th day of Terry's disappearance, there are reports of frenzied police activity on wasteland next to the car park.
This area was absolutely cordoned off. There were police everywhere, police vehicles, so the public had absolutely no entry. They closed the car park off while forensics were working at the scene, so this was an absolute no-go area for the public.
The search teams had made a grim discovery.
The suitcase was discovered under a vehicle ramp going into the car park. And when the searching officers opened it, they found a young lady's body. She was in a fetal position in that suitcase.
This young woman appeared to have been mercilessly strangled.
She'd been placed inside a suitcase that had been well hidden behind a wall, a squalid, desolate and dirty spot to leave a young girl's body. This was a brutal, horrific murder.
When the suitcase was found with a body inside, I think it was the news that everyone had been dreading in a way. But I think most of us had that sinking feeling that it was going to be Terry.
Police in Tunbridge Wells have been searching for missing teen Terry Edmonds. On the 12th day of her disappearance, they make a gruesome discovery under a car park ramp close to the station. The body of a teenage girl is found stuffed into a suitcase. She'd been strangled.
This was a brutal, horrific murder, a desperately tragic and awful way to leave the body of a teenage girl. The person who killed her had no sense of humanity to leave a teenager in such a position.
The body in the suitcase was found behind a wall, just here. Immediately, police taped off the area, and there were lots and lots of police officers, forensic teams, sifting through the area looking for evidence.
Police are in no doubt that the body in the dark green suitcase is tragically Terry's.
We had to go through formal identification process, but we knew from the description that that was Terry in the suitcase.
The next day, the body is formally identified as Terry Edmonds. The news rocks the idyllic town of Tunbridge Wells.
To hear that she'd been murdered and her body found in such an awful way, stuffed into a suitcase, I think people were absolutely horrified and so sad.
Terry's disappearance quickly turned into a murder investigation, and that really sent shockwaves through the close-knit community of Tunbridge Wells. It scared people, primarily because she was a young teenage girl, but also because There are many parents in Tunbridge Wells who feared that there could be a killer on the loose.
To quell residents' fears, police presence is stepped up across the town. Investigators hit the streets, carrying out door-to-door inquiries for any leads on the killer.
Kent Police followed a lot of lines of inquiry. They had 50 police officers working on it. They were talking to quite a few people in relation to her disappearance and death.
The post-mortem reveals horrifying injuries to the young teen.
The details of the post-mortem were shocking, they were horrific. And as a seasoned journalist, it was upsetting. Terry had endured a really brutal and violent attack. She had been physically overpowered. She'd been raped, and she'd suffered a number of injuries. And her last moments would have been truly horrific.
The post-mortem examination showed that she had grazes on her back and she'd been strangled.
Terry was strangled by a scarf that she was wearing. She looped it through, and by pulling it tight, he'd strangled her. She had some facial injuries where she'd taken some strikes to the face as well.
And she was probably smothered with a pink sheet, which was found away from the scene.
Blood is found on this mysterious pink sheet, which is retrieved with Terry's trainers and her cigarette lighter in a pile of rubbish close to her body. They're sent off for analysis at the lab. But it's the suitcase that police hope could be the key to finding her killer.
Once the body had been removed, then the suitcase itself was considered as a crime scene. And that crime scene was essentially packaged up carefully and submitted to the Forensic Science Laboratory for examination.
Police hope testing for traces of DNA could provide answers to some of their biggest questions.
Initially, we were looking to see where the suitcase had come from. Could we have an owner of the suitcase? Could that be a big clue for us?
Whilst the lab pores over the suitcase, the spotlight falls on the person who raised the alarm. Terry's boyfriend. New evidence comes to light about a fallout with his girlfriend.
The last person that the police were initially aware of that had spoken to Terry was her boyfriend, and they'd had a row. Bearing in mind, most murders are committed by people that are known to the victim.
Samples of the boyfriend's DNA are also found on Terry's body.
Police investigating the disappearance of 17-year-old Terry Edmonds have today made an arrest.
Detectives arrest Terry's boyfriend at his home in the nearby village of Hadlow. He's taken in for questioning.
He was living with his mother in a house in Hadlow, and when he was arrested, police went to his property, uniformed officers were stationed outside, and forensic officers went into his house and conducted a search all night.
But eventually, this would draw a blank.
They did release him without charge because it was quite clear he was not involved in any way, shape or form. And it was clear he was at work, and there was no way that he was involved.
With the boyfriend eliminated, police focus on the suitcase. Forensic scientists have been putting their star piece of evidence under the microscope, and the suitcase has yielded a significant lead.
We recovered various samples, including a sample of DNA from the retractable handle. And the retractable handle had like a little switch on it. So we recovered material from that switch, and that DNA profile matched an individual that was of interest to the police investigation. That was a light bulb moment in the investigation, because we felt that, you know, that would lead investigatively to the identification of a suspect.
So police make a second arrest, and the man is brought in for questioning. It's a turning point for the investigation.
That suspect, in this case, turned out to be the previous owner of the suitcase. Now, that person then gave information to the police to say, that is my suitcase, but I gave that suitcase away. I believe, actually, it was given to the Salvation Army, so a charity donation.
As the police hit another brick wall, the clock's still ticking, and there's a brutal murderer on the run.
Clearly a dangerous person, clearly a very dangerous person, and trying to get them. This is the real whodunit.
So detectives have to go back to the drawing board, refocusing their efforts on the location where Terry was found. The car park. Through their inquiries, investigators discover it was often part of her regular journey through town.
And she used the car park as a short cut through, if you like, to make her way back to the hostel that she was staying at, that was just at the rear of the car park.
Though nothing on the police's CCTV trawl shows Terry's last suspected steps through it.
There was no CCTV in the car park itself, but there was CCTV at the exit, and she wasn't seen to leave. So we checked everything, double-checked it, triple-checked it. We couldn't see her leave.
Police can now prove Terry never left the car park, which means she must have been killed there. They double down their efforts to find out who else could have been using it on the Easter Monday evening she went missing.
We had to look wider, and we were looking at other people. And within the car park in Tunbridge Wells, there were some people that we called the rough sleepers. They were homeless people who'd found certain areas of the car park, stairwells of the car park that they used as accommodation. And on those stairwells, certain people sleeping rough there on cardboard mattresses, sleeping bags, duvets, that kind of thing. We started looking at those people to see if there's anyone there was of interest to us. We made inquiries to the rough sleepers in the car park. Did any of them own a suitcase? And they all denied it.
But intelligence from an officer on the beat suggests otherwise.
A local police officer told us that he knew of one person who had a suitcase. And we looked through our records and we'd spoken to that person, he denied it. So there was a reason why he denied being the owner of a suitcase.
With their suspicions raised, detectives head straight back to the car park. They need to find the rough sleeper whose story doesn't quite stack up.
We then went and spoke to him again. He said he did have a suitcase, but someone had stolen it, and it was kept in the stairwell. Someone had emptied his clothes out from it, and the suitcase had gone.
But for investigators, something about his story doesn't seem right. So they arrest him. Perhaps this new suspect could blow the case wide open. In Tunbridge Wells, 17-year-old Terry Edmonds has been found dead. She was sexually assaulted and dumped inside a suitcase next to a car park. Police have made another arrest. A local homeless man has been brought in for questioning. 21-year-old Philip Bell.
He confirmed that the suitcase that Terry was in was the suitcase that he had previously owned. And we asked him more about it, but he insisted that the suitcase had been stolen.
Nevertheless, there were little glitches in his story that were starting to cause the police concern, and that's when they started to kind of zone in on him as a suspect.
Although police can find no evidence that their victim, Terry, knew Bell, they realise this isn't the first time he's had a brush with the law.
Philip Bell came to Tunbridge Wells from Salisbury, and he sort of set up a base in Tunbridge Wells.
He had left school at the age of 15 without any qualifications and had started living on the street. He got involved in petty crime. He became a drug dealer.
Philip Bell had been in Tunbridge Wells for about 2 years, living rough, and he was heavily into drugs, so cannabis, crack, speed, solvents. So he was a big drug taker and just drifting around, really.
And Belle's transient lifestyle puts him at the location where police believe Terry met her fate: the car park. Through their inquiries, police are told Belle had set up home on the landing of one of the disused stairwells. In the basement of that stairwell, forensic investigators find something sinister, with a link to Terry.
She had some dirt, some debris on her, inside her clothes, that was directly linked to the bottom of the stairwell. And at the bottom of that stairwell, her blood was found.
The fact that her blood, her being in that stairwell and injured was really important because it identified the attack site, essentially.
So police have found their murder scene. But during questioning, Belle denies he was ever in the stairwell or even the car park at the time when Terry disappeared.
He told them that he had nothing to do with Terry's murder and he hadn't even seen her.
However, when investigators seize his clothes, something raises their suspicions.
Having taken his trousers, they noticed that he had grazing on his knees, and that was consistent with him being astride Terry when he assaulted her and grazing his knees.
Now, he said he'd done that playing football. Now, we interviewed all the people that he used to play football with, and none of them ever remembered him actually falling down or hurting his knees whilst playing football in the time frame we were talking about. So again, that disproved part of what he was saying.
Although the case against Belle is beginning to build, the evidence is largely circumstantial. Detectives still don't have enough proof to charge their prime suspect with murder.
With there being no other evidence at that particular time, we had to release him on bail whilst we carried out other inquiries.
It's a blow for the investigation. Just days later, searching for answers about her daughter's death, Terry's mum once again makes an emotional public appeal.
I am begging you, please, if anybody knows anything, however little, get in touch, because anything to help catch the person that's done this will help.
Over the next months, detectives work 24/7 in the hope to get the potentially dangerous Philip Belle back behind bars. They doggedly trawl through hours and hours of the town's CCTV footage for anything that could link him to Terry's disappearance. Suddenly, something catches their eye.
It was sometime later we were looking at more of the CCTV and we found Philip Belle. We'd found him walking past the railway station and going into the car park just a few seconds after we suspect Terry had gone in.
Although we never saw him and Terry together, it was clear from the timing that he followed her in moments after she went into the car park.
Police now have proof that their suspected killer and his victim would have crossed paths. And that's not all.
We then, about an hour later, we had CCTV of him leaving the car park. So that sort of brought us to a conclusion that she'd gone in, he'd gone in shortly afterwards, he'd come out, but she hadn't. So that added to our suspicions that he could have been responsible.
For the investigation team, this is really big. The new CCTV blows apart Belle's claim that he wasn't at the murder scene at the time of Terry's attack.
Initially, when Philip Belle was arrested and interviewed in May, he denied that he'd returned to the car park. Although there was no CCTV or eyewitness accounts from what happened within the car park, the CCTV was absolutely crucial because it demonstrated that Terry and Philip Belle were effectively on a collision course as they entered the car park.
Detectives also spot something strange about Belle's clothing as he leaves the car park.
When we suspect was the hour in which Terry was killed, he came out wearing a different pair of jeans. And we were able to identify that from CCTV because one pair was baggy and one pair was slim fitting. So we were asking why had he changed that clothing?
Soon, investigators come up with a sinister theory.
Our theory was that he had got blood on his trousers, taken and disposed of those trousers, and changed them in that hour. Because why else? Why would you suddenly change your trousers halfway through the day?
Could this explain Bell's change of clothing? There was only one way to find out. Philip Bell is rearrested and questioned by detectives once again.
He maintained that he was not in the car park around that time on that day. He was then shown the CCTV, which put him in the car park for an hour and him leaving that car park. And he admitted then that he had been in the car park that day, and he actually admitted that he'd been in, it was called the lonely staircase because there was no exit from it to any main part of the car park. It was where Terry was actually killed.
But Bell is adamant he never saw Terry or took part in her attack.
Philip Bell had said during that hour between him going to the car park and him coming out of the car park, he'd been in his sleeping area smoking quite a large amount of cannabis.
What he said was that he was, his words, stoned on cannabis, which was illegal. That's why he lied to the police about where he was.
During that lost hour Bell couldn't account for, he claimed to have smoked over 7 grams of cannabis. But evidence from a drug specialist would blow holes in his story.
We were able to disprove that through the use of a drug expert who was able to analyse the CCTV of him walking in and him walking out, and saying, walking out, he was not under the influence of cannabis, such as would have been the case if he'd consumed what he said he had.
It seems the suspect who claimed he was high was walking far too steady on his feet.
He couldn't be walking in that way if he was smoking a large amount of cannabis in a short period of time.
For the team's advisors at the Crown Prosecution Service, the case against Bell is beginning to stack up.
CCTV evidence was absolutely key in this case because it provided evidence to undermine Mr. Bell's initial account that he hadn't returned to the car park. And it also gave us evidence that he changed his clothing as well during what we called the lost hour between him entering the car park with Terry and then leaving the car park after he'd murdered her.
Meanwhile, the forensics lab also has exciting news. An item of Bell's clothing that was seized during his first arrest has also yielded a result.
In the CCTV of Philip Bell in Tunbridge Wells, he was wearing a very distinctive hooded top. It was a Fat Farm hoodie. And that hoodie was submitted to the laboratory for examination. And on it was a blood stain. It was a very small blood stain, about the size of a penny, that matched Terry Edmonds.
And the lab finds more evidence on Bell's belongings that were seized by police in the stairwell where he slept. On his sleeping bag, 2 large stains of blood. Through DNA testing, these are also confirmed as Terry's.
It was absolutely pivotal in the case because it demonstrated that there was a very clear link between Terry Edmonds, her being injured, and the belongings of Philip Bell and that stairwell.
To add to that, the pink sheet found near Terry's body, that's suspected of being used to smother her, throws up more clues in the forensics lab.
Not only did it have the blood of Terry Edmonds on it, but it also had a very partial footwear mark, and that footwear mark was matched to Philip Bell's training shoes. So collectively, and I suppose circumstantially, things were starting to build as a case against Philip Bell.
Is this the final nail in the coffin for the prime suspect? Forensic investigators find a semen stain on Terry's underwear. That's a partial DNA match to Philip Bell.
Today, a local man, Philip Bell, has been charged with the murder of Terry Edmonds.
With the evidence stacked against him, the 21-year-old homeless drug dealer is charged with the murder of Terry Edmonds. The news spreads through the town of Tunbridge Wells like wildfire.
It meant for the first time we could actually legally name him as the man in connection to Terry's murder.
When Philip Bell was charged, I think there was enormous relief that perhaps they had found Terry's killer. Before that, there had been a little bit of impatience from the public.
Next day, Bell appears at Sevenoaks Magistrates Court charged with Terry's killing. The scene is set for his trial at Crown Court just 3 months later.
So when there was this breakthrough and it was publicised, I think people felt finally Terry's killer will be brought to justice.
In Tunbridge Wells, 17-year-old Terry Edmonds has been found strangled and sexually assaulted, then stuffed inside a suitcase. With the evidence stacked against him, 21-year-old homeless man Philip Bell has been arrested and charged with her murder. He's spotted on CCTV following Terry into a car park, and his hoodie has a stain of blood belonging to his victim. Detectives have built up a chilling theory of how he carried out the attack.
He tried it on with her, she refused, and he then attacked her, killed her, and sexually assaulted her. But having done that, he was a homeless person with no car. He had no means to get rid of the body, but he had a suitcase. So he put the body in a fetal position in the suitcase.
A year after Terry's disappearance, Philip Bell's trial begins at Maidstone Crown Court. He pleads not guilty to her murder.
The thing that struck me about him was he was completely emotionless the whole time. You look into their eyes and there was nothing there. It was quite chilling, actually.
But as the trial progresses, police realise convincing the court of Bell's guilt may not be an open and shut case.
The case against Bell relied entirely on circumstantial evidence. There was no smoking gun, there was no witness who saw him kill Terry Edmonds.
I think that Philip Bell also had a very good defence barrister who was able to just chip away at the little bits of evidence.
It became really a massive trial. I was giving evidence for days on end.
And before long, Bell's defence team has a trick up their sleeve to try and raise doubts in the jury. They point the finger at another rough sleeper in the same car park, one of Bell's associates.
The man had a conviction for manslaughter. And because he lived in the car park, it was suggested by the defence that he was the murderer.
Not only that, but the defence's new suspect could undermine one of the team's key pieces of evidence, the footprint on the pink sheet used to smother Terry.
The man had a pair of Converse trainers found in his possession, which were linked to the pink sheet found at the scene, with a bloody footprint that matched that pair of trainers.
Following a dramatic trial lasting 6 weeks, the jury retires. After 22 hours spent deliberating, they failed to reach a verdict. For Kent Police and the prosecution team, their worst fears have come true.
All the evidence against Philip Bell, it seemed very strong. So it was very disappointing for Terry's mum not being able to get any justice, and for the rest of her family.
With no verdict reached by the jury, the judge orders a retrial. 7 months later, a second trial begins, and a brand new jury hears the case against Philip Bell.
But again, we had the same situation with evidence being chipped away at by the defence team.
I was thinking, oh no, not again, because I was really concerned that it would be the same Groundhog Day kind of scenario.
This time, the defence focuses on Bell's hoodie. They claim there was an innocent explanation for Terry's blood on it.
They suggested that Philip Bell had brushed past the area where Terry's blood was and got it on his top. Again, I think that what they did was they raised a doubt about that, and the jury just couldn't be sure of it.
Following 19 hours of deliberation, the jury has news.
I think it's fair to say you could cut the atmosphere in that courtroom in Maidstone Crown Court with a knife.
Once again, a jury has failed to reach a verdict.
This is another massive blow for Terry Edmonds' family. They'd sat now through 2 lengthy trials.
There was, on my part, a real sense of shock and disappointment when the jury were unable to return a verdict, and then having to decide what we were going to do.
The team is on the verge of calling it quits.
Now, if we'd done that, Bell would have walked free, and Terry's killer would never have been brought to justice.
But in a last-ditch effort to save the case, the prosecution tries for something rarely attempted in British legal history. A third trial of the same defendant.
And so we argue that it was in the interests of justice to go a third time, which is unusual.
It was the right thing to do. We had an overwhelming case, that Terry had been murdered by Philip Bell.
It's a close call, but the judge sides with the prosecution and agrees to keep Bell in custody until the retrial. So the team has one last chance to put Bell behind bars.
If the case fails, then he is going to walk free, and he could be dangerous.
So the prosecution goes back to basics. First, they tackle Bell's claim that he brushed past Terry's blood left on the stairwell. Forensic scientists run tests using the same small amount of blood that was found on Bell's hoodie. This tiny amount would have started drying if he'd touched it after the attack.
So you can see that if the blood has started to dry quite considerably, the stains start to break up. They're quite gritty, they're quite flaky.
But the stain on Bell's top seemed fresh, questioning his version of events.
The blood stain on the hooded top was not flaky, it was fresh-looking blood that had been transferred, so it demonstrated that it wasn't drying blood. So that blood must have transferred very quickly after it was available, which started to put Philip Bell being involved in the assault on Terry Edmonds and being exposed to her blood after she was injured.
Not only is the forensic evidence building better than before, this time the prosecution have also found a new star witness who has come forward to the police.
A 15-year-old girl came and gave her account about how she had been invited to go to the stairwell that Philip Bell was staying in.
And quite chillingly, she described what we believed had happened to Terry, her being straddled by him and being bruised by him and him trying to assault her. But very fortunately for her, somebody came and disturbed them, and she was able to escape.
That was just exactly how we imagined that the attack had taken place on Terry.
And you could hear a pin drop. It was compelling evidence, and it showed in law that he had what we call a propensity to commit this type of offence.
As the prosecution's case seems to get stronger, Bell's testimony on the stand just falls apart. He admits being on the stairwell landing at the time of Terry's attack, but says he saw nothing.
He's within 10 feet of Terry being murdered and yet sees and hears nothing. It was fanciful.
So a jury considers the evidence against Bell for a third time. Just 3 hours later, they announce their decision: guilty.
It was a day of jubilation, really, for the family. There were loud shouts and cheers as the verdict was announced in Maidstone Crown Court.
There was an outpouring of pent-up emotion that had been there for a long period of time.
It was extremely satisfying when we were able to hear the guilty verdict and realise that we'd achieved some sort of justice for Terry's family.
Philip Bell is eventually sentenced to 28 years in jail.
He was evil. That's how the judge described him after the trial, and that is a fair description of him.
Justice is a consolation for the family, but it will never bring their beloved daughter back. Terry was a bright, intelligent girl, and she had a long life to look forward to that was cruelly taken away by Philip Bell, for no reason, really.
And the case has left its mark on the quiet Kent town of Tunbridge Wells.
I think Tunbridge Wells has never really got over the murder of Terry Edmonds, and I think the wounds are still there in Tunbridge Wells because Terry was part of our community and a lovely young woman. You could feel that fear and sadness that this had happened in our town.
Xin chào các bạn, chào mừng các bạn đã quay trở lại với phần thứ 3 của làm một chiếc bánh mochi donut bằng len nhé. Ở phần thứ 3 này thì chúng ta sẽ, sau khi phần đầu và phần thứ 2 chúng ta đã hoàn thiện được phần thân và phần vỏ của bánh, thì đến phần thứ 3 chúng ta sẽ hoàn thiện nốt những cái chi tiết bên trong nhé. Thì bây giờ chúng ta sẽ làm phần tóc của bánh. Chúng ta sẽ lấy một đoạn len màu khác nhau nhé, tạo một vòng tròn ma thuật, móc vào bên trong vòng tròn ma thuật này 5 mũi móc đơn. Kéo chặt sợi dây. Sau đấy trượt mũi vào chân móc đầu tiên. Và chúng ta cắt len nhé. Bạn luồn kim và kéo cái len thừa lại đằng sau. Đây là chúng ta đã được một cái chỏm tóc. Đây là cái chỏm tóc to nhé, chỏm tóc to. Các bạn cắt nút hai cái sợi len này vào với nhau. Tiếp tục các bạn làm cho mình hai cái chỏm tóc nhỏ nữa. Tóc nhỏ thì các bạn sẽ tạo vòng tròn ma thuật và móc vào cho mình 3 mũi móc đơn nhé. Làm hai cái tương tự nhau. Chọn tóc nhỏ nó chỉ là xíu xíu này thôi. Làm cho mình 2 cái. Đó, vậy là mình đã xong được 2 cái chỏng tóc nữa. Bây giờ thì chúng ta sẽ tiến hành gắn vào mặt này nhé, các bạn bên trên này. Chỏng tóc lớn các bạn sẽ gắn ở giữa mắt như thế này. 2 tóc nhỏ 2 bên. Bạn dùng keo nến bắn lại cho mình nhé. tắt như thế này nhá. Các bạn sẽ dùng sợi len mà mình vừa mới làm cái chồng tóc ấy để các bạn khâu mắt nhé. Thực ra có khi đan không móc không lâu bằng làm những cái hoàn thiện rất là lích lắt nhất, nhiều cái làm kỳ lâu luôn. Móc có khi cứ móc một lèo luôn đấy, cũng nó để hoàn thiện cái này nó rất là lích kích từng khâu nhỏ nhỏ. Cắt len và giấu mũi len đi. Nó sẽ lấy một chút len màu đỏ để khâu cái miệng nhé. Xong bắt mũi, bây giờ chúng ta sẽ làm cái viền kẹo nhé. Viền kẹo thì là ít len xanh, đỏ, tím, vàng. Kẹo mà để điểm vào cái phần viền của nó nữa. Đấy, rất là mất thời gian rồi. Đây là các bạn sẽ điểm lên trên cái phần viền mà chúng ta khâu gập lúc đầu. Đây là chúng ta cứ làm những cái đường chéo đi một chút. Bạn cứ làm xen kẽ nhau nhé, xen kẽ các màu. Nhìn nó giống donut chưa? Donut thì nó là có những cái đây, cái viên kẹo nhiều màu sắc rắc ở trên mặt đấy. Thì đây chúng ta sẽ rắc thay lấy vào rắc vào cái viên này. Vậy là mình đã hoàn thành xong chiếc bánh mochi donut rất là xinh xắn như thế này. Với chiếc bánh mochi donut bằng len như thế này thì các bạn có thể treo lên làm móc chìa khóa hoặc là treo trang trí các cái túi xách, cặp sách rất là xinh nhé. Nếu thấy video của mình hay, hãy cho mình xin một like, share và đừng quên bấm theo dõi kênh để có thể theo dõi các video khác hay hơn nhé. Xin chào và hẹn gặp lại. Chúc các bạn thành công nha.